This is your host, author Kate Perkins, and welcome to Crazy, Creepy, and Cool True Stories. Today's story is called So You Think Church is Boring? Murder and Mayhem in the Church. Hey, this is Kate. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story today. It's going to sound incredibly crazy, and it's a story about church. And don't let that fool you. This story has all kinds of stuff in it, from murder to intrigue to anything that you could possibly think of. What happened to me at this church was, it could rival any movie or TV series or anything. This was just the craziest thing. Okay, so starting from the beginning, if you listen to A Demon Summons, you'll get a little bit of a background of my childhood. And I made a statement during that where I said, I'm surprised that I actually even turned out to be a Christian, because there was a lot of witchcraft in my family. So that kind of gives you a background. Like I said, go back and listen to A Demon Summons, listen to The Angel and the Space Heater. That kind of gives you just a little bit of my childhood and things that I grew up with or grew up around. Creepy stuff happened to me all my life. I'll tell you more about some of them in other broadcasts, but right now I'm jumping ahead from The Demon Summons, which talks about when I was about 15 or 16. This happened to me during a period of my life between the years of 23 and 28. In the earlier part of my life, in the 22-23 range, I was in college. I had a pretty heavy caseload, and I still found time to be in the theater. And I was that person that hung out doing kids' plays and summer stock, because right around the corner from where I lived and down a residential street was a park. In the park, it was almost like Central Park, but because the park actually was in the middle of a city, and in the middle of the park there was a theater. So I would do summer stock there, and then with the same directors and crew that were in the college where I did the kids' plays. During these kids' plays, there was a young man that played the piano, and we hit it off really well. We would have all kinds of fun. I would try to sing. I cannot sing, and he would always tell me, don't even try, but it was sort of like a joke between us. But I think I might have been joking a little bit more than he was. I think he was serious about never trying to go in and have a singing career. But we had a good time. We would do these plays together. We'd always make sure that we auditioned for the same plays. He always did the music, I did the acting. And we had fun. We would, after rehearsals, a group of us would stand around and sing. He would play, and we'd sing around the piano. I mean, it was just like you would see in the movies or something. We really had a great time, and he and I hit it off really good. He and I ended up getting very close. I did not know at the time that he was a pastor's son. So it just never came up, and we never really talked about anything outside of that little sphere of what we had going. During this time, I was a bit naive. I was the youngest of three by a lot of years, and spent a lot of time with my grandmother, who was very into education. So she made sure that I was educated book-wise and common sense-wise, but in the ways of what was actually happening in the world, I was shielded from that. I wasn't really aware that there might have been something about me that other people might not like. Anyway, the young man invited me to his church, which took me by surprise because I was interested in a romantic relationship. He wanted me to come to church. In my personal life, outside of all of this, I had started having some really disturbing dreams. I'm not I'm not a big horror movie fan. I don't like that genre because, quite frankly, it scares me. I don't read scary books and all that kind of. Every now and then I'll get a hankering for something, but it has to be on a very say like PG-13 level of horror. I'm not into gore and blood and gruesome and things like that because I was having enough dreams of that kind of stuff to actually turn me away from that forever. I've always been a writer and I've always enjoyed stories, and my brain has always been wired towards making a story. If I couldn't find a good story to read, my brain would invent a story, and it would usually come out in the invention would come out in a dream. So I'm having these dreams. I'd be talking to somebody and they had their back to me, and then all of a sudden they'd turn around and be looking really weird and demonic, and they would be chasing me through dark streets and in houses, and something evil was always chasing me during this time, during these dreams. Now that's totally different than what my outside life was. Outside of, or my awakened life, I was in the theater, I was happy, I was having fun, I was going to cast parties, I was doing what I liked doing, and then I was taking care of the academic side of things. I hadn't actually gone into theology yet, but I was doing a lot of the prerequisite things like the English and the math and those kinds of things. So to counter that is when I started going into the theater. Needless to say, when I went to church, I was naive about the church world. Since my family tended to lean towards witchcraft and things like that, I didn't lean towards that, mainly because, like I said, it kind of scared me, and I knew, and then what happened in a demon summons actually scared me away from all of that because that was just pure evil. So I said, okay, I'll go to church with you. And long story short, I joined the church. I had a significant experience there. Some people call it being born again. Some people call it being saved. Some people call it joining the church, whatever you want to call it. There was a very significant event that happened, and I became a member of this church. And I didn't become a member of the church because of him. I became a member of the church because that was when God thumped me in the head and said, hey, pay attention. There's things going on in your life, and you need to have me in your life. And trust me, he can do that. He can do anything he wants to do, and he can do that. And for a while there, everything was kind of going okay. Even though I was naive, things were kind of going okay. I was kind of shielded even at the church because he was the son of the pastor. So I sort of, by proxy, I guess, became one of the first family of the church. If you're not familiar with black churches, there's a hierarchy, or at least there was back at the day. I'm not sure exactly if this hierarchy still exists, but I'm kind of positive that it didn't go anywhere. But there was a hierarchy of if you were married to, related to, dating someone in the family of the pastor, you kind of had this upper echelon position. So there were a lot of women in the church, a lot of girls at the time, and they were girl age, that were that asked me a lot, well, how did you do that? How did you get, one of the members of the first family? How did you, like there was some sort of prize or something that I won by having a relationship with this gentleman? I thought, okay, that's a little strange, but I didn't let it throw me. He wanted to get married. I agreed. And then he said, well, okay, he had to go. It was coming up on summertime. And where we lived, like I said, I lived on this main street where down the side street was a park. He lived in a neighborhood on the other side of the park. So we saw each other pretty much almost every day and did a lot of walking and holding hands and a lot of the old time, things that everybody rolls their eyes at. So the college year was coming to a close. We were coming up on summertime, and he had some friends. This was in Northeast Ohio, and he had some friends that were on the East Coast that he wanted to visit during the summer. About a month, and then he would come back and he would actually propose to me in front of the church, and it would be a big thing, and we would actually start talking about getting married and about planning the wedding. I didn't want him to go. I can remember crying so hard, and I couldn't understand why I felt like I did, because I'm not a clingy type person. I'm not a possessive type person. this was totally out of my character, but I just felt terrible about him going, and I kept begging him not to go. And like I said, this wasn't me. I'm a very independent person. I'm not a clingy person. He went, and he was helping his friends move a piano, had an undiagnosed aneurysm, and he died. Needless to say, when he died, I was devastated. I went and spent about a little under a week at his house. This would be at the pastor's house. His father, the pastor, would talk to me because he felt a sense of guilt over the fact that he had been so busy with the church and things like that, that he did not really know his son as well as he would have liked to have known him. He also, when he got his son's possessions, there was also a letter in it for me that he hadn't mailed yet. So he wanted to give me this letter. And I remember his father and I having this talk about how he didn't really know him that well. And he asked me if I would read the letter out loud, which I did. And actually, I ended up giving him the letter. I thought, if it made him feel better, this was the last thing of an emotional value that his son had produced. And he seemed to not have too many things from his son. So if he wanted, he could have the letter. Plus, I knew it would be just a very painful reminder to me to carry this letter around. It wasn't that I didn't care about him. It's just that it would tear me up to be able to have this letter with me the whole time. So I gave it to his father. I started to notice that things weren't quite what they seemed. I was still at the house grieving the fact that he had died of this aneurysm. And I was in the kitchen sitting in this little alcove where a kitchen table was. Across from me was one of his brothers, his younger brother. I was sitting thinking, I wonder if he had a suit, because he was in theater, I was in the theater. Back then, everybody was in coveralls, and it was 19, whatevers. And I mean, we all just looked kind of like hippies. So I was wondering if he had a suit and a good pair of shoes, because all he had ever had was coveralls and jeans and things like that. While I was sitting there thinking this, the younger brother says aloud, yeah, he didn't like wearing regular suits or anything. So I'm thinking, this is odd. Okay, that's what first got my attention. I might have been grieving, but I never said anything out loud about his clothes or whether he had a suit or anything like that. And here he is responding to something in my mind. But I didn't let on at first. And I thought another thing. I thought about, that's when I actually thought about the shoes second. And I thought, okay, well, he always had these tennis shoes on, and I don't remember. I know he had a pair of dress shoes, and I'm going through this, and the younger brother says, and when I say younger, we're still talking about in 20s, early 20s. He says, yeah, those brown shoes weren't very good, but such, and he goes on about that. So I'm thinking, okay, this dude is answering stuff that I'm thinking in my head. I'm not saying this stuff aloud, and this dude is sitting here answering this stuff. And I was always kind of leery about this dude anyway. Right as I was getting ready to confront him, another brother came in, because there were 3 boys and 3 girls. The oldest of the brothers came in, and he went to the refrigerator. Right as I was about to confront the younger brother for responding to things that I had not said out loud, the younger brother jumps up and physically attacks the older brother at the refrigerator. I have no clue what it was about. He never said why the act of this guy going into the refrigerator so enraged him. But the scary part of it was the voice that was coming out of his mouth, out of the younger brother's mouth, was not his own voice. It was a very shrieking, demonic combination, shrieking and gravelly, growling sound and words that were coming out, and just vile, vicious things. He was going to kill him. He was going to do this. He was going to do that. Guy didn't say anything when he came in and went in the refrigerator. He just came in and opened the refrigerator door, and then this attack came. So I'm sitting there stunned, and I'm terrified because I'm hearing this demonic voice coming out of this boy that was sitting right across from me just a few seconds ago. They get into a physical. He actually physically attacked his older brother. Everybody comes running from the house, from different rooms in the house, all the rest of the family. They eventually subdue the younger brother, call the police. The younger brother is growling and snarling and foaming at the mouth and threatening to kill everybody, and it was really incredibly scary. That was the first time in my life, up close and personal, I'd ever seen somebody have a demonic possession. And the police came. They called it in as a psychiatric event, and they came and they put him into a psychiatric hospital. Straitjacket, padded room, whole 9 yards. So I decided about this time, okay, it's maybe time for me to go home. Because once you all start acting crazy, like I said, again, if you listen to my the other broadcasts, I'm not that one that's going to be curious about what's going on and behind the smoking crazy green door and all that kind of stuff. I'm not one to watch scary movies, and I really sure as all blazes don't want to see it right here playing out in front of my life, in front of my eyes. So I decide, okay, it's time for me to go home. So I go home, and within 24 hours, members of the family are calling me saying that they need me to go down to court and tell them what happened so that they can put this guy away. I thought about it and I prayed about it because I didn't give them an answer right away, and I prayed about it, and I realized I couldn't do that. It wasn't because I didn't believe he was truly crazy, but it was because I had not, in fact, married into the family, so I really didn't have any legal recourse other than the fact that he did all this stuff in front of me. I didn't have but he didn't do anything to me actually physically, so I couldn't go down there and say, yeah, he attacked me. And then one of them said, now mind you, church people, one of them said, well, why don't you just go down there and lie and say he did, because I'm in this house with my kids, and now my kids are in danger. So I politely told them, look, this is a family matter. I am not in the family. You all made this abundantly clear after the death. So I cannot go down there in all good conscience and put somebody away, and then let's say for some reason, his mind clears up or whatever, or suddenly you all have a change of heart, then everybody's mad at me, somebody who's not a member of the family, who suddenly put, dear so-and-so in the crazy house. So I didn't do it, and that just brought about more hatred and bitterness. And the funny thing about it was, after this is when the false prophecy started. But the funny thing about it was, even though there was all this hatred that was being directed at me, they didn't direct any of that hatred to the young man, to the younger brother. It was all directed towards me. Next episode, we're going to talk about how this young man got out of the mental institution, and what happened when he came back into the church, being very reverent and pious, and how he was that way one way, and how it was being shown to me very clearly by actual eyesight what was actually going on with him the other way. And all of this is going to lead up to an incredible, crazy murder scene. So, stay tuned for part 2.